If you've been scrolling through endless specs, watching video after video, and still feel stuck between should I splurge on a pre-built and maybe I should just upgrade my old rig, this is the review that's going to help you decide. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last couple of weeks setting up a Skytech Shadow gaming PC in my own apartment, testing a handful of popular titles, and actually using it for a couple of days of regular work and streaming, so let's talk about what that experience really looks like. First off, the major question people have with any pre-built gaming desktop is whether the price matches the performance you actually get in day-to-day use. The Shadow comes with an AMD Ryzen 75700X and an RTX 4060, which on paper looks like a solid 1080p 1440p machine. In practice, that combination feels very predictable. The CPU handles background tasks, Discord, a web browser, and even a few Chrome tabs without ever stealing framerate from the game itself. I was able to launch Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p, high settings, and stay comfortably above 70 frames per second, which is exactly where most streamers target for smooth gameplay. When I cranked the resolution up to 1440p, the framerate dipped into the 5060 frames per second range, still perfectly playable, especially if you're okay with a slight dip in ultra-high textures. Now let's talk storage and loading times. The 1TB NVMe SSD is a big part of why the system feels instant. I measured load times in games like Elden Ring and found they were roughly half of what I was seeing on my older SATA drive. That translates to less waiting and more playing, something that's easy to overlook when you're just scanning headlines about GPU power. The SSD also provides enough room for a handful of large games and a few creative apps, but if you plan to keep a massive library of AAA titles, you'll eventually need an external drive or a second internal slot. Cooling is another hidden trade-off that becomes evident after a few hours of intensive use. The Shadow sports 4 RGB ring fans and a 240mm AIO liquid cooler, which keeps the Ryzen 7 from overheating during long gaming sessions. In my real-world test 10 straight hours of Warzone with high settings, the CPU stayed around 70°C, well within safe limits, and the fans kept a steady, low-pitch hum. The fan profile is aggressive enough to push heat out quickly, but not so noisy that it dominates a small apartment or a shared bedroom. If you're particularly sensitive to fan noise, you might consider swapping out the stock fans for quieter models, but for most users the cooling solution is a solid middle ground. Connectivity-wise, the inclusion of 802.11 AC Wi-Fi means you can hook up to a decent router without the need for an Ethernet cable, which is handy if your PC sits a few rooms away from the modem. I tested the Wi-Fi speed using a standard 5 GHz network and got close to the advertised 800 megabits per second, enough for smooth 1080p streaming while you game. However, if you're in a dense apartment building with a lot of overlapping signals, you might still see occasional hiccups, so a wired connection remains the safest bet for competitive play. Who should buy this machine? The answer boils down to a few scenarios. If you're a casual gamer who wants to jump into modern titles without fiddling with BIOS settings, cable routing, or worrying about component compatibility, the Shadow offers a plug-and-play experience that truly just works. It's also well suited for content creators who need a reliable workstation for video editing or streaming, because the combination of a high core count CPU and a decent GPU handles most Adobe Premiere or OBS workloads without choking. Finally, anyone looking to avoid the hassle of building a PC from scratch, especially those who are new to PC gaming, will find the Shadow a low-stress entry point. On the flip side, the Shadow isn't the best fit for a few distinct groups. First, competitive gamers who chase the absolute highest frame rates, well above 144 frames per second, might feel limited at 1080p Ultra, especially in fast-paced shooters where every millisecond counts. Second, users who already own a powerful GPU and just need a chassis upgrade could view the included RTX 4060 as unnecessary expense. Lastly, if you're an enthusiast who loves customizing, the pre-built nature means you're somewhat locked into the factory configuration. While you can upgrade components later, you'll have to spend extra time and money opening the case, checking clearance, and possibly dealing with BIOS updates. Beyond the headline specs, let's unpack the practical strengths. The real win here is the balance between performance and noise. Many similarly priced pre-built rigs either scream like a jet engine or throttle back performance to stay quiet. The Shadow finds a sweet spot, offering respectable cooling without sacrificing the peace of a small living space. Additionally, the lack of bloatware is a pleasant surprise. As soon as I booted Windows 11 Home, the system was essentially clean, no extra trial software, no unnecessary background services, so the first thing I did was install my preferred utilities and jump straight into a game. That's a time saver.